When you go into a bookshop and you're looking for some books on yoga, you'll be directed to the mind-body section. And this is what we associate yoga with, the development of the body and mind. And there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But it's got nothing to do with the true sense of yoga. There seems to be an assumption that if you develop your mind and you keep working on your mind, eventually you'll get enlightened. And of course that's going to involve having a healthy body, because the body affects the mind, so you've got to work on the body. And there are endless practices you can do to develop your body and mind. And if you think that's the way to enlightenment, well, I have to part company with you here. Enlightenment has nothing whatsoever to do with body and mind. But body and mind can detract us from enlightenment. And this is the challenge that the enlightenment practitioner, the yogi, faces. The yogi needs to remember what they're about. They're about coming back to samadhi. They have to have the wisdom to see, to recognize what state they're actually in. Are they in samadhi or are they not in samadhi? This means having the energy to go against and to transcend, if possible, whatever mood you're in. And you have to have total confidence in what you're doing, in what your goal is. This means that you think it's worthwhile. It is the main goal, the main point of your very existence. This is what's meant by faith. What I've just described are the 5 spiritual faculties, which I mentioned in video 14. So the enlightenment practitioner has touched enlightenment. It has dawned. Enlightenment has dawned. There's been a break in the clouds and the sun has shone through. But the clouds can still come back. And this is the mind and body, which has its own momentum. It has its own tendencies. It has its own psychological disposition. This is what we're faced with. We still have the habit of thinking in terms of an external world and of a separate identity walking around in this external world. We think of our inner life and our outer life. This is dualistic thinking. We identify with this strongly. This detracts from our enlightenment. So this is what we've got to deal with. And we've got the 5 spiritual faculties from Sutra 20 to help us. Well, we need these qualities if we're going to make any progress whatsoever. And then hopefully what happens is our investment in that dualistic thinking, our investment in an external world diminishes. We start coming back to our true self. As Sutra 21 says, the center of gravity moves near. There's only 3 words in Sutra 21. Extreme, vehemence, and near. So there's a weight here. There's a weight. And it's moving. The weight can pull us out there, or gradually it can pull us back to here. So I've translated this weight as center of gravity. So what happens is our center of gravity is here, not out there. We stop putting ourselves out there. We are grounded here. But it's not always so. Sometimes it's out there. Sometimes we'll get wrapped up in something we think of as out there. And this is the situation that Sutra 22 describes. Hence there can be varying degrees, mild, average or intense. The idea that yoga is some kind of steady progression to ever refined states and ultimately to enlightenment is a romantic story. What happens when you touch enlightenment? Well, there's a couple of possibilities which are rather dire. One is your ego takes it in. Maybe you become a spiritual teacher and you might be quite charismatic and you've touched this enlightenment. You can talk about it. You can make people feel good around you and so on. And you build in the memory of this enlightenment. Or what can happen is the mind can react against it and plunge you into debauchery or despair. So this is it. There are ups and downs. This sutra is sometimes taken as an exhortation to practice hard and tells us that there's mild effort and middling effort and intense effort. But this is ridiculous. This is of no help whatsoever. Patanjali doesn't mention effort. What he seems to be saying is that in spite of having the 5 spiritual faculties, results can be mild, average or intense. Perhaps your spiritual practice, your enlightenment practice just isn't happening. Perhaps it's happening very well. Perhaps it's intermittent. This is the way it is. This is what we have to accept. Sometimes we can be right on the ball and sometimes we can lose it completely. And it's these times when we've lost it. That is when we mustn't give in to despair. This is where we need to apply some wisdom and to accept what's happening. Quite a lot of this particular book deals with this situation. And there'll be times when there's nothing we can do. The idea that you can do anything is a weight that needs to be dropped. And so Patanjali says in Sutra 23, alternatively, give everything up to the supreme identity.